paid platform powered by Happiness Co. Today, I am extremely excited to be chatting to one of my very good friends, a great friend of Happiness Co., a great friend of mental health in Australia, and one of the guys who is not only doing great things, but making a real difference in people's lives through the things that he is doing. So welcome to the platform, Lachlan Samuel.
Thank you.
Hello.
What an intro. And I'm glad we're
How are
friends,
you,
bro. Good friends.
We have friends first and foremost is what I meant. Mate, we are live. It's Friday. And when we get together, we obviously banter for a long time. So we'll try and keep this nice and concise for everyone that's watching. But if you're jumping on right now, make sure you give us a love, a like, a care react if you've got that available to you. Don't give us any sad or angry faces, okay? That'll really dent Lachie's confidence.
Yes.
And we don't want that. All right. So, Lachie, for those of the viewers that don't know what you're up to, in your world, you obviously got a very professional setup right there. You're doing some great things in that very room. What are you up to? And how much of an impact is it having on your life?
Okay. So I guess what I'm up to for the most part is like this setup is for podcasting. And that's, I guess the podcast has come off the back of being a FIFO worker who's had his own struggles, been evacuated for being suicidal, and then just starting this as a space for men like me who are isolated to, I guess, consume content that would help them without other people knowing about it. And then off the back of this podcast and just remaining consistent over the last 2.5 years, it's just, I guess, snowballed into speaking and mental health workshops and one-on-one men's coaching.
Brilliant, mate. And in terms of the impact it's having on your life, what are you getting out of it? Apart from the obvious stuff in terms of business and what have you. I mean, personally, what are you taking away from it every single day? Because I know that you're someone that feeds off the happiness of others, and I mean that in the nicest way.
Yeah, I mean, I get obviously, like, number one is a sense of fulfillment, but also like constant. I feel like I'm a student, like a life student, and it's just constant lessons every day. And like the beauty of the podcast and being with people like yourself is consistently connecting with people who inspire you to be better, who challenge you to be better, and challenge you to face uncertainty, to face fears, and to break through flaws, I guess.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put what you do into a nutshell. And I think sometimes when we work in the space of mental health, it's such a broad topic, a broad industry. It's really hard to surmise what we do and why we do it. So it's refreshing to hear you put it so eloquently. I'll ask you, you mentioned there about FIFO work. I'll quickly ask you what impact FIFO work had on you and how it's led you to where you are now.
Okay. Do you want me to go through like my experience through FIFO?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah, just looking at, the impact it made on you while you were there, and then obviously subsequently once you left.
Well, the impact, first of all, I went into FIFO as a guy who had a lot of underlying issues, who was going into FIFO purely for the fact that I was going to make X amount of dollars so that I could go out to a pub and tell X, Y, and Z person that I made this money, that I worked really hard, that I was a FIFO worker. So
it's very materialistic.
Yeah.
From your point of view. Yeah.
Absolutely went into it for the wrong reasons, which led to me spending all of my money, wasting all of my money, picking up those bad habits from the people around me. I remember my first paycheck, I had to buy everyone around, and it ended up costing me like $1,200 at the bar. And I was just like, oh, okay, this is what you do as a FIFO guy.
Yeah, right.
And so that just snowballs, and the more money you make, the more money you spend, and you just adapt your life to fit the paycheck. And so I just consistently did that, had poor habits with spending, poor habits with, I guess, my ego and needing constant validation from different women on different camps, different sites, even if I was in a relationship. And that was, for the most part, encouraged, man. Encouraged, and then, that mixed with the toxicity of masculinity, or toxic masculinity, although I don't like that phrase, just the need for guys to have power over each other through using banter that attacks personal issues. That just all compounds to a point where you just don't feel comfortable, or I just didn't feel comfortable opening up and sharing anything that I was going through. And so I just bottled it all up into the point where I finally hit depression, and then got forced to resign from that. Yeah, man. That was my first experience.
And there's a lot of questions I'm sure that the viewers have. So I'll try and I guess predict what's coming up in the comments at the moment, because we're here on Zoom. But with your experience around that group mentality, and obviously the male group mentality, do you have any advice? Because we're always about the upside. Do you have any advice for the people that might be going through that at the moment? How they can navigate that? How they can, be themselves, have an enjoyable time, maybe whilst on camp, especially now that they're probably on site a little bit longer. What's your best advice for keeping them pushing through and being positive and not getting caught up in the negatives?
I think you have to have some sort of consistent routine that you fall back on, that sets your day up and then sets you up for sleep as well. So important, like you guys have with Happiness Aid, with the group, is having that gratitude first thing in the morning and creating those new neural pathways, teaching the brain to essentially look for the good in every situation. Those are like incredibly powerful tools, especially in that environment. If you're waking up doing that first thing in the morning, then that's going to positively impact. It's like knocking down dominoes for the rest of the day. And then I guess just getting yourself in a space, or giving yourself permission to put yourself in a space like this group, Happiness Aid, or some of the other ones, or even if it's at camp, if they've got yoga, if they've got some sort of meditation, allowing yourself to get into that position where you have permission, not just from yourself, but from others, to be yourself. Like take off the mask, take off the stoic, the banter, all of these different masks that you have to wear to keep up appearances on site. Find a space where you can take those off at least like once a week and be yourself.
I love that. It's practical advice, mate. And that's what I think people will benefit from the most. It's lived experience and it's practical advice. So fast forward a little bit, you leave the FIFO game and you decide to start sharing your wisdom and knowledge, and as you learn, you share. What was starting a podcast like for the people that might be watching who are thinking they want to share their message and they want to get their words out there? What's your sort of advice or experience in beginning that process?
Well, I was still my second go with FIFO. I was at Wheatstone. Someone had just taken their life, and I had become like deeply depressed and suicidal and did not know it. Couldn't acknowledge it, couldn't accept it, didn't know it. And I was trying to record the first couple podcasts in my room by myself, and it probably took me about 3 weeks. And then when I got evacuated for being suicidal, I finally gave myself permission to dive in.
So you'd started podcasting prior to leaving your second stint, is that right?
Yeah, I had the ambition to do it, man. Like I wanted to do it to help others. I just hadn't given myself permission to be that person. And I think when you're starting a podcast, one of the biggest things I've learned is that you don't have to be healed to be the healer, in a sense.
Sure.
Yeah, you don't have to be a master coach to coach other people, in a sense. And like that's what I took into podcasting. That's why I stopped myself from putting it out straight away, is because I thought I had to be completely healed to share other people's messages. And it's just not the case. It's just removing that expectation you have on yourself to be perfect, and just putting something out there, being consistent. And I guess consistency breeds confidence.
Absolutely, it does. And then that just snowballs into that courage factor. And I think podcasting, especially because it is such an easy medium to get into, I put easy in the a loose term, but you think that you can just jump in and get it going, but podcasting is meant to be storytelling. Podcasting is meant to be from the heart, and you do need to break down some barriers internally for that to come through properly. Because you might attempt a podcast or attempt to get your message out there. Maybe you're doing something like going live for the first time on Facebook, or you're getting into speaking, or you're going to Toastmasters, or whatever it might be. But if you don't actually work on that internal battle, where that person is either telling you you're not good enough, or telling you you're no one cares about your message, remember why you started. Would that be a good way to surmise that as well?
Yeah, and I think it's making sure that you're going into it with the right intention as well. Like my sole intention was to help people suffering like me, and I don't think without that intention and that need to be of service and to help other people that I would have pushed through. Because when I started out, it was like 10 to 20 hours of editing a week, because I wanted to edit out every little bit and make it all perfect.
Yeah.
So,
which is that's draining. That's exhausting. I've dabbled in that myself, and yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it's just making sure you're going in with that right intention, because ultimately that's what's going to, I guess, be the driving force that determines whether or not you push through when things get hard. Like, been through patches where I've had everyone say no to a podcast, and then I didn't have one come out, and I love being consistent. And the only thing that got me through was the thought, oh shit, if I don't put myself in a space to get a guest, then I'm not going to be helping the people who listen to this podcast. So high intention, low attachment.
Yeah, brilliant. And speaking of the podcast and its concept, which is obviously it does what it says on the tin, which is it's about opening up and being vulnerable and sharing what you're going through. The word vulnerability is being put into the limelight, I think, in a really positive way. I think the last year or two, we've made some significant changes in this space as a unit, as everyone around the world is doing, especially in male mental health. But what's left to do around vulnerability? What do we still need to be doing to make sure that it cuts through and isn't just a buzzword for a while?
I think we have to provide safe places, like what you have with Happiness Aid and with the 10-week mentorship program. These safe spaces where people have lived experience but can also guide. Because vulnerability, it's a buzzword, and we love to say like we need our men to be more vulnerable, but what does that actually look like? We need to make sure it's the right kind of vulnerability, and not just vulnerability for like ego validation, for external validation, or manipulation. So we've got to understand what the intention again is behind the vulnerability, and make sure that we've got people in place to help, like peer support workers, coaches, guides, whatever, and the spaces for them to open up and be themselves without being judged. I think there are places that are providing that, but on a larger scale, that needs to happen.
Yeah, the concept is always great. It's the infrastructure that matters, right? You can want to build a bridge, but if you build it with popsicles or pop sticks, it's not going to be as effective, right? That's a great analogy. I'm going to write that down. Pop sticks. My next question for you, mate, was probably a bit of a personal one, but you answer it in your own way, I'm sure. When you were going through your darker times and you were struggling, what were the things that you did? What help did you seek, if any? And what tips and techniques do you have that you can maybe share as an advice piece for people that might be going through something right now in their own life, particularly in such an uncertain time?
So I guess what helped me most was probably going back to that vulnerability. And I guess the permission slip to be vulnerable, the permission slip you give yourself. If I didn't have the courage or the permission from myself to be vulnerable, I never would have given myself permission to reach out to people like Maddie Bruce, who I call my wizard, who's got different tools that help me process the suppressed emotion, trauma, stress, whatever. And going on from there, it's tools like breath work and meditation, connecting back into the body, seeing how the body's feeling, taking time to slow down through meditation and just analyze thoughts. That's probably one of the the best things that you could do for yourself in terms of self-love, self-care is cultivate a level of presence of mind or mindfulness so that you can, or you have the ability to stop. Like we all get on this negative train of thought at some point, whether it's I'm too fat, whether it's, I'm not good enough for my partner, my penis is too small, in my case. We all get on those negative trains of thought, and at some point we need to stop at the next train station and get off, and presence of mind, mindfulness is the tool that helps us do that.
I think when you share those little tidbits about what your personal hang-ups were, if you like, do you feel like that makes the most impact? Because I know that it's always followed by a bit of a self sort of deprecating laugh, but you use that in your teachings, do you not, around confidence in body and everything to do with its impact on mental health?
Sorry, what was the question?
There wasn't a question, it's more of a statement. But yeah, my question would be, how often do you see that having such a great impact on people, especially obviously blokes?
Yeah, I mean, we all need to feel like we belong. And if you hear a story that makes you think, oh shit, that's me. Like if you can put someone in the story themselves, make them resonate, make them connect, then you have them essentially, because we're linguistic storytelling beings. That's how we've communicated throughout time, and that's how we'll continue to communicate, whether it's via social or like verbally.
Yeah, absolutely. That fireside chat is now over Zoom or on on the socials. Look, I think what you know how much I adore the work you do, but for those that maybe don't, those that don't know your story, I know it's very hard to condense, but there is the FIFO element. We've mentioned the body issues. There's a couple of other things that come into the fray when you mention your lived experience. What were they, and how important were they in shaping the way that you do your work now?
I think my relationship to my daughter's mother is very important. And that was me trying to force her into an abortion. When I found out that she was pregnant, we weren't together at the time, and learning through that. Like obviously at the time I was a complete narcissist and just wanted that to happen because I thought she was trying to keep me. So like fully in that narcissist mode. And what I had to learn through that process and then coming out the back end of it was that my view of a relationship, a perspective of a relationship and what a woman was supposed to be was completely warped. And then that goes back to, I guess, porn and childhood trauma with sex abuse. And like I had a porn addiction since I was 8 years old. And so, the way I viewed women was warped because I'd only ever watched porn. And for me to be a man meant I had to please a woman in the way that I saw in porn. And so my partners were never, ever enough because I was always searching for the porn star. And then the sexual abuse, being told that my penis was too small by, an older dude all the time. And then having him say, look, we've got to stop, people going to think we're gay. Me needing to validate that I wasn't gay, that it was big enough, just compounded that porn addiction and my view of women, what they were, and using them just for my own, I guess, ego validation, essentially. And that's probably what caused most of the issues in my life, is that trauma, that warped perspective of what a relationship was, what a woman was, what a man was supposed to be within a relationship, and how I was supposed to show up. So that's taken a very long time to process, because those were a lot of relationships, like a lot of women that I've had to speak to, a lot of pain and suffering to work through all of that. But if I hadn't, I wouldn't be the person I am now, with the lived experience I have now to, teach and help the men that I do.
Well, you've been through a powerful journey to make a powerful impact, mate. And I think it's credit to you for taking that and turning it into a bit of more than a bit of a purpose and a passion. You mentioned one thing there, which I know is a big passion project of yours, in terms of making sure that men and women, in a way, utilize it either utilize it the way it should be used or could be used, or not to use it negatively, and that's pornography. And I think it's a really important one for us to all be talking about, because it is one of those taboo things that gets pushed down, just like mental health and depression and suicide were in the past, but it's starting to, I guess, rise to the top. So what are your thoughts on it? What's some advice on that for maybe some blokes or ladies out there, or anyone who's finding themselves reliant on it?
I think it just goes back to having that presence of mind, that awareness, and stepping back and noticing when you're using it. Like, in what situations am I finding myself in where there's this craving, this urge, this compulsion to use pornography? Is it when I'm bored? Is it when I have a task that I need to do that I know is really important, and so I procrastinate using porn?
I think it's called procrastinate.
Oh, that's a good one. So it really is just bringing awareness to like when and how you're using it. And then I guess delving a little bit deeper into how is the use of porn showing up in my life. And generally you can tell by the way that you interact intimately with your partner. Are you wanting, like, is the present moment within that sexual experience enough for you to remain present, or are you constantly having to fantasize while you're having sex with someone? Yeah, and then again, the same thing with a lot of the guys that I'm working with is the infidelity thing, the cheating thing. Are you looking for the porn star because you're watching porn so often, and that's what you think a woman has to be? I'd say to take a good hard look at that, which is something that a lot of men in that position don't want to do.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? The way in which you can approach it, like, 'cause it's all well and good talking about the problem and bringing up the issues, but let's go and bringing all that together, the FIFO experience, the suicidality, the depression, the way you bravely went through what you did when you were younger. Now, how are you helping people, and how can people get in touch with you and utilize your experience to maybe help themselves?
Cool, thank you. First of all, Open Up with Lachie Samuel is the podcast, and I've really just made the transition from it being like full on just mental health to now just reaching out and interviewing coaches, mentor guides within this mental health spirituality space, just because they've been through it, they've got the lived experience, and they know how to articulate the tips, tools, and tactics that they've used to help themselves and others. So Open Up with Lachie Samuel, that's a podcast on all podcast platforms. The free men's vulnerability course, LachieSamuel.com, if you want to opt in for that, that's free, which is hosted on Happiness Co's platform, so thank you. And then I do one-on-one men's coaching as well. So 3-month program, 3 phases, set the stage, engage with the underlying beliefs, and then plant the flag, decide who you want to be and show up as that man. So yes, and how you reach me, Lachie Samuel on most platforms, LinkedIn preferably.
All copyrighted, right? No, that's excellent, man. And I think for those that are watching, send Lachie some love, because he's done some incredible stuff for Happiness Co. He's done some incredible stuff for the space of mental health. But Lachie, before you go, mate, we are going to play a word association game, okay? You don't get out of Happiness Co. and Happiness A without having some fun, all right? All you've done over there is talk about all the problems. No, I'm joking. So we're going to go through and the way that we do this, mate, if you haven't seen it yet, which you wouldn't have because none of them have been on the platform yet, everyone of influence, every sort of celebrity that we've done Q&As with, every personality as you are that we've spoken to.
Mike Tyson.
We've put this to them, and all I need from you is a bit of a sentence or a couple of words, or even just a word that you associate with the word that I give you, okay? Nice and easy. The first one is kids.
Fuck. The first word that came to my mind was giraffe penis. I don't know why.
Giraffe penis?
Yes. Do you want honesty, or do you want me to make a good one up?
Be authentic, you know. I mean, it's only live. Okay, giraffe penis. We won't probably stay with that. So maybe if I say the word again, kids.
Playful.
Love it. So my intention was your kids and to get an insight into you being a dad. But let's go with playful. I like that, and it's always important. Let's go with being a parent.
Association for that?
The word is parent. Up
Parent.
to you.
Hard work.
I bet. I'm not a dad that I know of, so it's not something I can relate to directly, but I'm sure it's difficult.
Yep, I've been on daddy daycare watch all day, so that's why.
Nice one. And for the dads out there, you're not babysitting when you're looking after your own kids, okay? That's being a dad. Awesome. This one might be a bit of a curly one, but all it is FIFO.
Life is the first word that come up, but I think choices is what I'd want to go with, and by that I mean like any life you choose to live is determined by the choices you make. FIFO, speaker, whatever you want to be, determined by the choices that you make within that lifestyle. And just because, you know, I know FIFO, I see the stories on Facebook and Instagram, and I see the comments of guys blaming the environment, blaming their companies. But you have the choice. You have the choice every day. You get to make different choices. You get to choose how you show up. You get to choose what you think, how you feel, how you act, how you behave, which ultimately determines your life. And so, yeah, choices is what comes up.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. Just quickly on that, to delve into a subsequent question, you mentioned you see the comments, you see the stories, and it's around maybe the people who are working in the industry talking about their organizations. But on the flip side of that, the people that comment, you know, you made that choice, you chose it, and being really negative about people deciding to make a living through that platform or that channel. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's just a lack of empathy and compassion, really coming from a place of hurt and just projecting that hurt on someone else. For the most part, I'd say that's probably someone who believes that if they had more money, they'd be in a better position mentally, physically, spiritually. And so therefore someone in FIFO who does have the opportunity to make that sort of money should be there because that's what they see as being the gateway to, I guess, the state they want to be in.
So perfectly put. And I think the comments do genuinely come from people who see that as maybe their way of solving their current problem. So if you're well off financially, you're better off financially than that person making the comment. So therefore you should be, like you said, have that bridge to happiness, which is the money, which, as you so well put earlier, isn't necessarily the case.
Yeah, that's and like I've had my fair share of snowflakes and kill yourself comments. So, you know, I know all too well how negatively people can approach that sort of story, especially within FIFO, even like you'd see with cricket and footy, guys who come out and say they have mental health issues get blasted when they're given a story, given a headline, because people assume that because they make that sort of money, they should be happy.
Yeah, and a lot of the athletes and sporting personalities on our platform have echoed those sentiments, mate. So it's not just for the people that are high profile. It's literally the financial side of it. So it's quite interesting. I got another one for you.
Yes.
Matt Bruce.
Yeah. Oh, word association again?
That's I'm just saying that.
Silence. No.
Yeah.
Matt Bruce, wizard. That's all that comes up when I think of Matty Bruce. He's been my wizard for the last, I'd say, 6 months.
He is a genuinely great human, and we're so lucky to have him as part of the team. One last word: happiness.
Is that what you were going for?
No, it wasn't. But the concept of happiness was my intention, but you know what? You wrapped it up in a nice little bow. But no, it genuinely happiness. What's it mean to you?
Uh, I think happiness means celebrating the ups, because life is not linear. There are ebbs and flows. It's like the stock market. It has the ups and downs. And if you're only ever clinging to the ups, then you're going to have a pretty miserable life full of suffering. Like, how do I put this? No, I've gone blank.
That's all right. No, it's such a subjective topic, and even when I was speaking to Georgia Love earlier this morning, who'll be on the platform later next week, Justin Langer, same thing. Asking these questions of them, these guys are obviously in the spotlight all the time, given questions back to back, and when they're being the interviewee, they ask some curly ones, and as soon as you say something like happiness, they tripped up as well in a way, in that it's very hard to ascertain what it means to you sometimes, and I think that's half the problem.
Yeah, I think for me, I've really had to learn how to celebrate the wins, and that's what I think happiness does mean to me, is giving yourself permission to celebrate those, to celebrate yourself. I've been someone who hasn't allowed himself to celebrate a birthday his whole life, because that would bring too much attention onto me. And so, like, if you can celebrate the wins, if you have end goals, if you have big goals, you can get there and celebrate that too, because you've celebrated every inch along the way.
And it's conditioning yourself to be okay with it. I love that. And Justin Langer did answer your question around celebrating the wins. That'll be out in a week or two as well. So yes. I see that it's a common theme, and I love it. Lachie Samuel, as he's known on the socials, thank you so much, my man, for giving us your time and coming to the Happiness Aid platform live and making sure that people take away some incredible value. Do you have any shout outs, anyone you'd like to say hi to before we wrap this bad boy up?
Yes, my partner, Katie, you're doing an amazing job as a mum. Remove the expectation. You are perfect just as you are.
How good's that? Whew, that's a touching moment to finish on, mate. And I think we all should take that away and reach out to someone that we love in our life, no matter who they are, what they do in our life, and just tell them that they're appreciated. Because that's something that you've taught me over the journey, mate. Every time we message back and forth, there's always some sort of, I appreciate you, appreciate that. And it's something that people don't do enough of in life. So thank you for teaching me that.
Oh, thank you for your time, bro. And thank you for being you.
Oh, bro. Thanks so much, mate. And we will see you again on the Happiness Aid platform. I'm definitely sure about that.
Okay. Love you. Bye.